Hey everyone and welcome. Today we're going to be breaking down a team fight from the perspective of a control mage, where we will analyze an exceptional example for how to play your role correctly. In our next team fight guide, we'll contrast this one, showing you how to play it out as an assassin. Since every team fight is different, our focus is going to be on the thought process behind general concepts that you will want to follow when you do get into team fights. Today we'll be focusing on a team fight played out by Froggen's Anivia. Anivia as a control mage basically means that you control a certain area of space around your champion. If your opponent tries to invade your space, they will have to pass through your crowd control and burst. For Anivia, her key tools to control her space are her ultimate, her stun, and her wall. But if this was a Syndra, it would be her stun and her ultimate range, and if it was Lux, it would be her root and her ultimate, and if it was Victor, it would be his W and his ultimate, and so on. Stuff that is scary and difficult for people to walk through. So with that in our minds, let's jump into seeing how Froggen leverages his space to control the fight on his infamous Anivia. To give you context of where we're at in this game, it's just under 17 minutes into the game, and Froggen's team is down 700 gold, a tower, and 2 infernals. So they're not too far behind, but the upcoming big team fight will be game changing. Froggen himself does have a nice lead however versus the opposing Orianna. With a large CS lead and 2 levels ahead of her, he's up about 1300 gold. Froggen's Caitlyn however is very far behind the opposing Jen, who is 3-0. After clearing up the second Infernal, the red team marches topside to engage onto the blue team, who are trying to trade neutral objectives via securing the Rift Herald. They dance around Rift Herald a little, and the fight officially starts when the Fed Jhin uses his ultimate to assist his team with engaging. At this point, Froggen has nothing to do besides just get out of range of the Jhin ultimate, but it's where he goes which we should all pay attention to. By kiting up into this choke point, he now has 2 pillars of strength that he can leverage to optimize his damage and control output in the upcoming fight. Firstly, his positioning behind this wall, which is something that you want to look for in jungle fights, as firing your skill shots from out of vision dramatically increases the chance that your skill shot will hit. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, by positioning here, it means that his control area will be this jungle entrance, which is a nice choke point. The opposing Sejuani has already hopped over the wall and is fighting Froggen's Gangplank, Nautilus, and Rek'Sai, so these guys are looking to follow up and will have to cross through Froggen's territory to do so. In this type of situation, many players would maybe throw out a spell or 2 here and walk around to try and help their teammates who are currently being engaged on. While that may be an okay choice, it's better to control this space and completely zone off the enemy mid laner with the space that Froggen is currently controlling. Swain and Alistar go through to join the main fight, but this Orianna is now isolated in Anivia's controlled area. Orianna is trying to juke Froggen's Q, but he holds onto it and they score the kill. This is made possible because Anivia is pretty tanky and is also ahead of the Orianna. You can do the same type of play if you have the range advantage, or you're simply strong enough to go toe to toe with the champion that you're trying to isolate and kill. If Anivia was by herself and behind here, and she was up against a fed Victor or something, then Anivia would probably look to just delay the Victor and join the team fight to play it more safe, rather than getting in range for the kill. Anyway, with Orianna dead, it's now a 3 vs 4 in favor of the opposing team, as Rek'Sai is dead and GP has just died in the other half of this team fight. Froggen passed down and hits a 3-man stun with ultimate. This is really nice and isn't too difficult to land when you cast it over a wall as we mentioned before, since the opponents don't have any time to anticipate or react to it. Sejuani drops incredibly low and has to flash out, making it more of a 3v3 at this point. Alistar, Swain and Jhin are all passing through Froggen's controlled space, and he's now starting to kite back into his original choke point while he waits for his cooldowns to come back up. As Jhin begins to exit into the river, Froggen looks for an opportunity to cut him off. He uses wall and ultimate and is looking to land a Q if he continues to path out, and Jhin correctly steps back to avoid this, and Alistar looks for a flash re-engage while Anivia's spells are down. He looks to get the knock onto Anivia, but Froggen kites back a little and stuns Alistar in the brush. Sejuani returns after regenerating a little bit of health from the red buff, and this is now Froggen's cue to flash out before he gets stunned. The great thing about this is that he didn't immediately flash when Alistar flashed, and instead made the opposing team work harder to force Froggen's. This of course was enabled by excellent mechanics and Anivia's Q, but if you do have tools and space to force an engager to work harder to force your mobility, then playing to your limits like this can really pay off, rather than just instantly respecting every engage from your opponent. It should also be noted that Anivia's Q is up right now, because she didn't use it on the potential catch on Jhin earlier, as Froggen was patient with it and didn't throw out the Q randomly. He would only have thrown out the Q if Jhin committed to walking through his ult and out of the river, so he has it ready for the Alistar engage. Anyway, unfortunately the Caitlyn does end up dying here, and with the Sejuani back in the fight, it's now a 2v4 with Nautilus and Anivia on super low health. There's nothing to be done for the Anivia now besides back off, unless the red team tries to chase and dive them. Jhin does overstep, which is a huge misplay by him, but it's definitely not uncommon, and Nautilus catches him with a nice hook. Remember, Jhin is easily the most fed player, and Froggen follows up and picks him off. So far, Froggen has been playing out the fight calmly and patiently, controlling certain areas of the terrain, while he kites back and gets a number of rotations out as his cooldowns refreshed. We've learned pretty much everything that we can here from a knowledge perspective for how to control space, and what we're about to see are mostly super impressive mechanical outplays. Froggen cuts off Sejuani's exit with a perfect wall into a stun, securing the kill. Then he actually follows the retreating Swain Alistar, knowing that if he dodges Swain's E, which he does, he can catch the Swain and land yet another kill. He locks him up into his ultimate, but waits with his wall. This is Anivia specific, but by waiting with his wall, he can see what direction Swain will go to get out of the ultimate. If he goes forward towards Anivia, he can wall here, and if he walks away, then he can wall off his exit. Swain tries to move forward, so he walls at the last moment to block him off, and now he has to walk all of this distance to get out, and dies. This of course was masterful play from Froggen, perfected over thousands of games. But in just a matter of minutes, we did learn a lot from the fundamentals behind his positioning and spell usage, which we can apply to pretty much every control mage in the game. Let's take a look at the fight in full speed before we jump into the recap. When the fight broke out, Froggen immediately pulled back into a choke point, where his control space would be hyper effective, as his opponents would have to funnel through to reach him or his teammates. Froggen played the fight out slowly and patiently, not taking any huge risks, and let his opponents chase him rather than him being the one to try and force things. In doing this, he was able to get off a number of spell rotations, constantly pressuring isolated targets, and landing his skill shots over walls. In the end, his opponents ended up overextending to dive, and he was able to capitalize on their mistakes with super strong positioning, decision making, and of course mechanics. Alright, so that's it for this one. If you enjoyed this, please like the video, hit the bell icon and subscribe so you don't miss another upload. Catch you next time.